centuries before the United States existed, before Jamestown, before the Mayflower. There was a powerful North American kingdom so vast, so organized, and so culturally rich, that European explorers once described its people as giants with godlike discipline. A civilization with towering wooden palisades, massive communal lodges, elite warriors, and a political network stretching across rivers, forests, and coastlines. Yet today, almost nobody knows their name. This was the world of the Timucua, a kingdom erased from history not by defeat alone, but by secrets, alliances, betrayal, and something far more devastating. Welcome to a forgotten North American empire. To understand the Timucua, picture the southeastern corner of North America 500 years before American independence. We are in what is now Florida, South Georgia, parts of Alabama, stretching toward the Atlantic coast, dense pine forests, swamps that steam under the sun, rivers curling through the land like living veins. And at the center of this world lived a powerful network of chiefdoms united by language, tradition, warfare, and diplomacy. The Spanish called them Timucua, but this wasn't a tribe. It was a civilization made up of multiple provinces like Ustiga, Pareno, Aquera, Macama, Utina, and many more. Each province was ruled by a cacique, or chief, and some of these chiefs controlled thousands of warriors and vast territories. But who were these people, really? They were farmers, hunters, warriors, diplomats, priests, sailors, and artists. They built large towns with communal buildings, ceremonial plazas, council houses that could hold hundreds, even thousands. Their political world was complex, their rituals elaborate, and their understanding of nature deep enough to shock European scientists. But what made the Timucua rise? How did they become a regional powerhouse whose influence stretched across the southeast? To answer that, we must explore the rise of a forgotten kingdom. How the Timucua became powerful. Long before Europeans reached the continent, the Timucua lands were already thriving. Agricultural mastery. The Timucua cultivated maize, beans, squash, and tobacco, not casually, but systematically. Their farming supported large populations, freeing warriors and leaders to focus on expansion and diplomacy. Their food security meant power. Power meant influence. And influence meant a network much larger than outsiders ever realized. Strategic geography. The Timucua homeland sat on some of the most important natural crossroads in North America. River systems leading deep inland. Coastal routes connecting them to Caribbean trade. Forests rich in game. Fertile land perfect for agriculture. Anyone who wanted to travel, trade, or migrate through the region passed through Timucua territory. And they controlled it with precision. Warrior culture. European accounts describe Timucua men as tall, muscular, and disciplined, often painted for war, wearing elaborate headdresses. They did not fight like small scattered bands. They fought like organized regiments. They used bow units, spear formations, ambush tactics, psychological warfare through body paint and ritual. And when provoked, their retaliation was swift and devastating. Political unity. Despite being made of many provinces, the Timucua shared a common language family, a cultural identity, and alliances built through marriage diplomacy, ritual exchange, shared ceremonies, military cooperation. This unity allowed them to stand strong against rival chiefdoms and expand their influence. Spiritual authority. Timucua chiefs weren't just political rulers. They were believed to have spiritual power, the ability to commune with spirits, control seasons, even protect warriors. This belief created loyalty and stability. By the time Europeans arrived, the Timucua were not a local tribe. They were a dominant regional kingdom standing at the peak of its power. Now, let's enter their golden age, the height of Timucuan brilliance. What made the Timucua unique? From the 1200s to the late 1500s, the Timucua reached their cultural and political zenith. Architecture and urban planning. At the center of each major town was a council house, sometimes 100 feet wide, capable of holding entire clans. These were massive, circular buildings with wooden frameworks, layered thatching, and smoke holes at the top. They engineered impressive palisades, wooden walls surrounding towns, fortified with earthworks and guard towers. Not primitive, not scattered, organized, fortified, and deliberate. ceremony and ritual power. Timucua's spiritual life was elaborate. Seasonal ceremonies tied to agriculture, ritual fasting for warriors, offerings to ancestors and forest spirits, leadership initiation rituals, complex mourning traditions, festivals involving singing, dancing, and symbolic battles. Spanish friars later wrote that Timucua ceremonial gatherings could last days, drawing hundreds from nearby provinces. Their priests were astronomers, herbalists, historians, and storytellers, keepers of knowledge passed down over centuries. Trade and diplomacy. The Timucua weren't isolated. They traded across the continent, exchanging shells and pearls, timber, animal skins, tobacco, ceremonial goods. Some items show connections to the Mississippian cultures to the north and even coastal groups tied to the Caribbean. Technology and craftsmanship. They created high-quality dugout canoes, bows nearly as tall as their wielders, stone and bone tools with remarkable craftsmanship, colorful body paints from natural pigments, fine woven garments made from plant fibers. Their artistic style was bold, symbolic, and spiritual. Social structure. The Timucua world wasn't random, it was hierarchical. Caciques, political and spiritual leaders. Headmen, advisors and village chiefs. War captains, leaders of military units. Priests, ritual specialists. Commoners, farmers, builders, hunters. Craft experts, canoe builders, weavers, artisans. Everything operated like a kingdom with several provinces, each loyal to its leader, but united under a broader cultural identity. This was the world that shocked Europeans when they arrived. But it was also the beginning of the end, because the Timucua were about to face a threat no kingdom on the continent could fully prepare for. Now we enter the era of conflict and mystery, the turning point that erased a civilization from memory. By the mid-1500s, the Timucua world was thriving, strong, united, confident. But in 1513, a towering figure stepped onto their shores, not a warrior, not a rival chief, but a man whose arrival whispered the beginning of an invisible war. Juan Ponce de Leon. To the Timucua, he was simply another stranger from across the sea. But behind him came more. French explorers, Spanish soldiers, missionaries, mercenaries, slave raiders, each with their own ambition, each with their own agenda. The French arrive. In 1562, French Huguenots sailed into the region and tried to build alliances. Why? Because they recognized something Europeans rarely admitted about indigenous nations. The Timucua had power worth courting. The French admired their discipline, their agricultural wealth, their skill in warfare. They shared gifts, negotiated, promised trade. But in the shadows, Spain watched. Spain strikes back. Spain considered Florida its territory. When they saw France forming alliances with the Timucua, they believed their empire was being challenged. In 1565, the Spanish founded St. Augustine, the oldest European city in the United States, right in the heart of Timucua land. And from that moment, the region became a chessboard, a geopolitical battlefield. The Timucua tried diplomacy. Many Timucua chiefs thought they could negotiate. They had survived rival chiefdoms for centuries through diplomacy. They believed these new arrivals could be handled the same way. Some chiefs welcomed Spanish friars. Some traded with soldiers. Some made alliances with France. But Europe did not play by the rules of North American diplomacy. The Timucua soon realized the shocking truth. This was not a negotiation. This was a takeover. The invisible enemy. Even their warriors, strong, tall, disciplined, could not fight the deadliest weapon Spain carried. Disease, smallpox, measles, influenza, plague. Within a few decades, entire Timucua provinces collapsed. Ancient towns emptied. Ceremonial centers fell silent. Imagine a kingdom shattered not by swords, but by something they had never seen. A mystery, an invisible force, a terror that erased millions across the continent. The Timucua were fighting 3 wars at once. A political war against Spanish domination, a cultural war against missionary pressure, a biological war against unstoppable epidemics. It was too much, even for a civilization as resilient as theirs. And so began the fall. Picture the Timucua homeland in the early 1600s. The forests are still tall. The rivers still flow. But the villages are quieter. The council houses once filled with laughter, storytelling, debates, and ceremony now echo with emptiness. Spanish missions rise across Timucua territory, each demanding labor, allegiance, conversion. Some chiefs resist. Some cooperate. Some try to play both sides. But disease keeps returning. Every decade, another epidemic sweeps through. 1613, 1649, 1655, 1672. Imagine trying to rebuild your nation when, every time you rise, another wave strikes. Then came the final breaking point, the raids. By the late 1600s and early 1700s, English-backed raiders from the Carolinas began attacking Spanish Florida. Their targets? Timucua towns. Warriors were captured and sold into slavery in Charleston and the Caribbean. Villages were burned. Families scattered into forests and swamps trying to survive. This wasn't just warfare. It was erasure. A kingdom that once stretched across hundreds of miles was now fragmented into survivors fighting for every breath. The last provinces. By 1726, only a few hundred Timucua remained. By 1763, Spanish Florida was transferred to Britain. A small group of Timucua were evacuated to Cuba and vanished from historical records soon after. Not defeated in battle like the Aztec or Inca. Not conquered through open war, but slowly erased through disease, displacement, and imperial collision. Their disappearance is one of the quietest tragedies in North American history. A powerful kingdom, a complex civilization, gone, but not entirely, because their legacy still whispers today. What the Timucua left behind. Though the Timucua people were nearly erased, their influence still lives across the southeast. In the land. Many Florida and Georgia rivers, towns, and regions still carry Timucua names. Archaeological sites preserve their pottery, tools, house foundations, ceremonial plazas. Every excavation adds another piece to the puzzle of how advanced this kingdom truly was. In language. The Timucuan language, though no longer spoken, is one of the best documented indigenous languages of the early Southeast. It reveals a worldview rich in metaphor, spirituality, and connection to the natural world. In culture, modern tribes in the region, including the Seminole and Miccosukee, carry influences shaped by earlier Timucua populations and other southeastern peoples. In history, the Timucua challenged the myth that North America was sparsely populated or lacked complex civilizations. Their story proves cities existed, kingdoms rose, alliances expanded, economies thrived, societies flourished long before European arrival. In memory. Even though the Timucua were nearly erased, historians, archaeologists, and indigenous communities are reviving their story. Every time we speak their name, we undo a little of that silence. For centuries, the Timucua were whispered about only in forgotten diaries, decaying archives, and abandoned mission records. But now, their story rises again. A kingdom that stood tall. A people who shaped the land. A civilization erased not by weakness, but by forces no human could withstand. They were warriors, diplomats, farmers, philosophers, architects, navigators, leaders, and though their towns have faded into the soil, their legacy remains carved into the geography, the memory, and the very identity of the Southeast. This is Dude Historian, and this was the story of the powerful North American kingdom erased from history, the Timucua.